Then the next one is to look into section 6. Go all the way down, look into section 6. Right. Okay. Article 6 says capacity of state to conclude treaty, meaning that every state possesses capacity to conclude treaty. So who can conclude treaty? It's not a person, it's the state. What does it mean? The state. The state must have capacity. So therefore, that is the person that you are sending, right? Okay. Every state possesses capacity to conclude treaty. Who is that? Every state possesses capacity to conclude treaty. This word state is represented by a person that is commissioned. Dan kat Malaysia, the one who represented, who have the right, pergi, sign, all right, or sign and bring it back and sign. In our, all right, who is that state? That state is, all right, who is the state that have possessed the capacity, all right? Right next to it, the capacity is always found in the federal constitution if it's in Malaysia. The capacity in UK is always determined by the court. All right, the capacity in US is the person representing the Senate. All right, itu baru capacity saja. Right, in this country, who have the capacity according to the federal constitution to sign treaty? It's not the duta. Who can sign treaty that bind the states? It's the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. All right. So now the next question you want to ask, if the must Yang di-Pertuan Agong sign all treaty? The answer is yes, unless Yang di-Pertuan Agong has already, all right, assigned the power, all right, to represent the state to the person that is commissioned to do so. Who could that person be? A person that is advised by the Prime Minister to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong that he can, all right, okay, do that. In a certain situation, all right, Yang di-Pertuan Agong signs the treaty himself. Right, this is treaty. Yang di-Pertuan Agong doesn't have to be the same Yang di-Pertuan Agong as long as he sits in that official post. Any questions? Right. Okay. So let's go back to the other one. Yeah.
Prof, I have a question.
Yeah.
The Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the one to assign the treaty, but is it based on the advice of Prime Minister or on his own capacity?
Right, based on federal constitution. If in the federal constitution, there will be some position there. Some act must be on the advice of the Prime Minister. Some act must be the advice of the government. All right. Okay. Yang di-Pertuan Agong, all right, is never acted independently because it's not a legal personality, but it is only representing the personality of a state. So in order to answer your questions, you have to look into the constitution. All right, tengok dalam keadaan mana. When it comes to certain things, all right, Yang di-Pertuan Agong receive advice from the Prime Minister. But in certain types of treaty, Yang di-Pertuan Agong receive advice from the government. Okay.
Yeah, Prof, thank you. Thank you for
okay. Kena tahu bidang kuasa Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Ada satu one whole long chapters on the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Ada A, B, C, D. Alright, okay, situation. And then look into the power of the federal, look into the power of the state list, federal list to understand where Yang di-Pertuan Agong come into the picture. There is no generality. Alright, okay, okay. Now coming back into this situation, right, that is Article 6 that says, all right, a person must have capacity. Either the capacity is through the Commission, Federal Constitution, or The commission come from the Yang di-Pertuan Agong upon advice of the Prime Minister or upon advice of the Agong. Jadi persoalannya boleh delegate ke tak? Right? Okay, the answer is on the part of signing boleh delegate. Tapi on the part of ratification in Malaysia tak boleh delegate. Yang di-Pertuan Agong must be the one that send a document of ratification. Okay, now put a full stop sekejap. We are looking into the element. But since I mentioned ratification, I must say to you, right, if before a treaty becomes legal and binding and bounded by the principle of pacta sunt servanda, a treaty goes into several procedure. All right, on the part of the states, the treaty number one will have to be formed, and signature of the state is important. Once it has been formed and signed by the state, all right, okay, then the state must ratify it. R-A-T-I-F-1, ratified it. I purposely make it sound so that you can hear the word A, because the spelling is not like in contract, rectify. Betul kan? Ratify, pengesahan. All right, okay. Now, after it has been ratified, during that time, here comes, before the ratification is submitted, a state can have a reservation. All right, these are towards the procedure, formation procedure. All right, once the reservation is only allowed when the treaty allow reservation. Some treaty doesn't allow reservation, so there is no reservation allowed. All right, so the state duty, number one, sign, ratify, prepare for reservation if allowed, then the last one, submit the document, and then the treaty will come into enforced. The treaty come into enforce according to Vienna Convention, which we will see in a minute. All right, when the number of ratification states have been submitted. There are a great implication when a treaty has been ratified, it will come into enforce. When they said it comes into enforce, that treaty, it's not simply enforced to the state members who sign the treaty, it will be enforced throughout the world. Right? So if your country have not signed it, it will be binding on you. All right. Sometimes you don't have to be afraid because some treaty are so specific, we don't have to bother, but we must know that it does exist. All right. Okay. Now, once it has been enforced, it will be applied to the member. All right. And the rest. So this country, the rest of the country that does not sign and ratify earlier, they can do so. That is called the period of ascension. Bukan ascension, alright, to nabi-nabi naik ke langit, tapi ascension. Ascension is acquiescent, bersetuju selepas selepas entry into force. Why do you want to assent to it? Because you want the same privilege given to you. Alright, so if you don't assent to it, you don't get the benefit that is offered. Every treaty have benefit offered to it, and this benefit is not trying to bribe the states, but this is the benefit that is to meet the objective of the treaty. Right? So barulah treaty will last. Sometimes treaty come to the termination after the treaty have met the objective. Some treaty never dies. Some treaty are immortal. Treaty can only die. Treaty can only be terminated. Treaty can come to an end of its life only when the treaty have a provision that allowed itself to come to an end. We will do that looking into the conclusion by understanding Vienna Convention as well. Right, so since we have looked into that, okay, now I put up a case there, Anglo-Iranian Oil Company case. This one talks about Iran government was not a treaty, Because there is no privy of, bukan there is only privy of contract. All right. So over in the case of Anglo-Iranian Oil Company case, these are between Anglo, UK, and Iran. They talks about, all right, oil, they talks about concession of oil, but that is not a treaty because there it is considered a contract. That's the other part in the legal character of a treaty that we need to know, whether it is a treaty or whether it is a contract. Okay, now what is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two parties. All right, a contract is an agreement between two parties. This is what it means, privy to contract. All right, who can be two parties? It can be a state and an international organization. But the intention must say, the wording of the agreement that you sign must say, this agreement is intended to be a treaty between a state and a state, or a state and an international organization. Okay, right? So if it doesn't say so, all right, and the party that is involved cannot subject to the rest of the states in the world or other than them two, then it is not a treaty. It is a contract. All right. Okay. Any questions there? Tak ada. Right. If not, then we look into that a treaty must be in a written form. Yeah.
Prof.
Yeah. Yes, Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Yeah. What is your question? So, Ronnie, you were saying, if a state signed but not ratified, does the state
If
bound by?
if it's already being rectified, is it still bound by the bona fide?
Right. If it has been signed, then it has been ratified, then the state is already in a position to be called a contracting party. All right, that act is bona fide. Why?
I mean the state that did not agree with the treaties before, they don't want to sign it, but at last they will sign it, the treaty. Is it they still pass the bona fide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because bona fide is reflected in your action.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Okay, right. Therefore, all right, it is best that if you don't want, don't sign it. That's then you are slapped with the principle of pacta sunt servanda. This is the more dangerous one than the free consent and bona fide, because usually in some country, their argument was that they had free consent to observe, but they don't have good faith in signing because they don't believe in what is the content, but they signed it anyway. That's why in the beginning, Vienna Convention says 3 things will trap a state. All right, trap because I presume the good faith was not being associated the time the signature was being given. What is the meaning of the word pacta sunt servanda? What is the meaning of the word pacta sunt servanda? Look into the section on pacta sunt servanda. What is the section on pacta sunt servanda? We soon come across to it. Let me just finish my sentence so that you grasp the meaning. Pacta sunt servanda, okay, in the translation means you are bound by what you sign. Kan? Sakit hati tu, you are bound by what you sign. So the moment you go, you sign, then it says the principle of pacta sunt servanda. You bound by what you sign. You can take pain, you can argue, you can go to ICJ or the European Court to say, I don't have the, all right, okay, intention at that time, but I signed it. It doesn't matter whether you do or not. Principles of pacta sunt servanda said the state that signed, that state is bound by. Okay, There are plenty of cases, all right, in the formation of Malaysia. Let me bring you, all right, to answer your Ronnie questions. Sometimes when a state signed it in the beginning, the state doesn't really understand, because at that time when we signed the formation of Federation of Malaysia, all right, they don't know what will be the impact of that action to the states. Remember the position in Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, before we become a federation, this country was negara bersekutu, all right, okay, and negara-negara tidak bersekutu, right, okay, all right, unified and not unified states, right. Now, but when they agree to have a federation, all right, and suddenly one state feel that this is taking away my rights that previously I have the rights to do. Now, because of the treaty that I've signed was this state with the Federation of Malaysia, that right is taken away from me. All right. So now I want to be out. That has been questioned in 1969 by the case of government of Kelantan versus the Perdana Menteri Tunku Abdul Rahman and the government of Malaysia. Right? Okay, in 1969, there have been a case like that. And that case, at that particular time, went all the way to the Privy Council for consultation and decision. All right, let me give you the fact of the case. The same issue was that there was free consent, but later on, all right, knowing that there is a limit to the state action, all right, the state feels that they don't have the bona fide now. But the Fakta Sun Sarbanda principles was binding on the negara Kelantan or the negeri Kelantan. Let me give you the facts of the case of government of Kelantan, all right, the states versus, all right, Perdana Menteri Malaysia Tunku Abdul Rahman and government of the Federation of Malaysia. Okay, right. The fact goes into a case earlier. Right, one case earlier, decision has been made. That decision leads to this case, government of Kelantan versus government of Malaysia. Right, the facts of earlier case was this: government of Kelantan hired a timber expert, timber, pemotong pokok, right, expert people from England, right? He wanted the tree in the forest of Kelantan to be cut properly so that the wood or the tree or the balak, all right, can be used according to what he wants. He wants to build a new istana and a whole new government from the wood of Kelantan. So it has to be specifically cut, properly done. And you can see the tembok today. If you've been to Kelantan, you see the whole timber become the gate of in the middle of the town. There is a symbol that in law, it means a lot to see it, all right? Now he hired this group of timber cutter, all right, from the England. The whole troop came to Malaysia, all right. Before that, I must say, the government of Kelantan has already signed, happily signed, all right, okay, the Federation of Malaysia. That is a treaty, okay. So when the king signed it, after that, they wanted to build because of the sharing of money, all right. They believe they can have more money to build more buildings and to have a proper government in Kelantan, all right. This idea, I say it, all right. Okay, it's not stated in the facts, right? So this man, the Sultan, hired this group of timber expert from England to come to Kelantan and cut the tree, all right. Okay, they cut it all, they work on it, they did the design, and then one of part of the building that is being, all right, designed by them, now is already being fully erected, all right. So government of Kelantan now must pay the timber merchant, right? When they know that sharing of profit is between all payment, all right, must be coming from the federal. That was the earlier understanding. So when they send the bill to the federation government, the federal government of Malaysia, federal government refused to pay because the hiring of the international timber expert was not done by them. And because Negeri Kelantan has no rights to hire international expert. Because in the federal list, it says that when it comes to international matter, whatever the ground, all right, it can only be signed by the federal government. Okay, can only be. So who appoint this expert timber from UK? They come in with their tools, with their expert. All right, the tools are left in Kelantan. All right, they wanted to be paid. Kelantan now doesn't feel that it's not them who should pay. It's the federal, because now they sign and they promise to share everything. But there is this provision that says, all right, okay, if it is an international contract, international treaty, or international agreement, it must be signed by the federal government of Malaysia. So they refuse to pay. Kelantan have to pay it themselves, all right, because they refuse, right? And Kelantan, in the Kelantan court says that Kelantan will have to pay, all right? The king then sue. The king is the head of the Kelantan, all right? The Menteri Besar of Kelantan together sue government of Malaysia for failing to honor their promise in the treaty. Okay, in the local courts, in the government, in the courts of Malaysia, the decision was that, right, Federation says international contract must be signed by, appointed by the federal, for the federal to be responsible for the bill and payment. All right, so since it is not done, so it's government of Kelantan that's supposed to be, right? Okay, government of Kelantan take the matter appeal all the way to Privy Council. All right, in Privy Council, they read the free consent, bona fide, and principle of fakta sunt servanda suffices. All right, so at the end of the day, fakta sunt servanda reflects the action. Once you sign, you are bound by it. Since the state signed it, the state has to discharge the bill. All right, because it is an illegal contract not done by Malaysia, but it is a private contract done by Kelantan. The same situation of the state suing the government, and all the three cases after this, in this modern time, when you were born and I grew old, all right, Terengganu have sued government of Malaysia on the same ground, all right, with the concession. But they come out a decision where instead of going and appeal to the highest appeal possible court, all right, they settled it amicably using arbitrators. All right, okay. Malacca have sued the government of Malaysia, all right, in the private suit, meaning that at the end of the day, it goes into arbitration. And Sarawak have done so as well, isn't it? All right, Petronas have done so as well. All right, so you must remember, the Federation of Malaysia is a treaty. In the case of Kelantan, there was an issue, right? Okay, that is related to it, that says they wanted to terminate the treaty between the government of Kelantan and the Federation of Malaysia. All right, the answer to that is that if in the treaty it allows for a provision for termination or suspension or expulsion of members, then that is allowed. If there is no provision, or the provision is silent on it, all right, and then the termination of being a member to the treaty is not allowed. Okay, and that is the aspect of treaties that usually we don't, right, really see happening. That's the reason why, whether you are in the state or whether you are in the federal, if there is a treaty, we have to take precaution, understand it. See, if the treaty is all about whales, it's all about saving seal in 1969, the treaty doesn't affect us, all right? Because we don't have seal, whales to protect them or to stop people from, all right, hunting them, or what do you say, a sport or whatever it is, to kill them and hunt them. All right, there's a season for that, limited season. There's a treaty that doesn't want to affect us, but the treaty have come into enforce. Right? There are a treaty that every time when it comes into enforce, the treaty, a copy of it, the department in New York will send to every state. Bukan every state constituency in Malaysia, but will be sent to Malaysia. It will always be shared. That's why nowadays in every state there is an officer from Wisma Putra. In every state, every negeri Kelantan, Terengganu, negeri-negeri itu semua ada pegawai dia, to make sure that you understand the effect of, all right, entry into force of a treaty. Okay, Ronnie, that is how the position is. All right, now let's
Okay,
look
thank
into,
you, bro.
yeah, thank you.